Oh, it's working?
Can you hear me, yeah?
I can hear you.
Oh, wicked. Good morning.
Morning. Good.
How are you?
You good? You're from the UK?
Yeah, I'm from the UK, yeah.
Very good. You want to do video or you want to just stay in voice? What are you comfortable with?
Oh, yeah, no, I was going to say, I was going to come on video, but basically, so when I come online, if I do like lives or anything, I do cover my face. Obviously, I'm Muslim. I don't
Okay.
really like my face online, but I've got a cup of coffee here and I can't drink it. I want
Okay,
to, I
fair
want to
enough, fair
enjoy
enough.
my
No,
coffee.
no,
Like,
enjoy your coffee. Enjoy your coffee.
yeah, the face veil that I normally wear, it's like, it's coffee accessible, but this, yeah, I can't find it anywhere. So
No, all
for
good.
this
Okay.
one, I'll just keep the camera off. If we go live again in the future, I'll probably come with the camera on. I'll be more prepared with my face veil.
No, no worries. It doesn't matter to me anyway.
The
So
sun's
you're an
actually shining
ENTP?
here. Yeah, I'm an ENTP. I've found my set type. I've been mistyped. I've been for a journey of figuring out what I am. But now,
All right, give it to me. What have you got?
well, I mean, I've lived like two different lifestyles. And so that I think that's kind of fed into why I was mistyped before.
What were
Well,
the
I
two
say,
different lifestyles? What do you mean?
so I'm a revert to I'm a revert Muslim.
What does
But
that mean?
obviously I was born and raised. So I'm a Muslim. I practice the religion of Islam,
Okay.
but I wasn't born a Muslim. So obviously growing
Okay.
up, I was raised without religion. I was just
Hmm.
typical Western girl, literally done everything all the Western people do, go raving, been to Ayia Napa, like I've done all that stuff, been to all the party resorts and everything. So yeah, like I was a lot more in my extroverted nature, I think, when I was a bit younger and before I was Muslim. But I didn't know about personality type back then. Like I had no idea. I was just kind of living life on autopilot mode, right? Just really kind of clueless, to be honest. Just in that system of school, college, and not really knowing what I wanted to do with my life. And yeah, things just started to feel really empty for me. And I started searching for, I've always been a thinker, I've always been quite inquisitive, just didn't really have knowledge, didn't really read or anything like that. But I did get to a point where life just started to feel really, Blair. Wasn't really happy with the whole going out every weekend. And so I just started to seek more in life and I found Islam. And so obviously I transitioned into that life. And it's funny because at that point, I feel like that's when I started to become more introverted. Do you see what I mean? So before
Hmm.
I was very extroverted, then I became really introverted. And so I
I'm
found
gonna
out,
hold you there. Just what made you choose a particular religion? Like what? Like
um,
how did you conclude?
okay, so it didn't take much.
Because actually, when the more I think about it, like your story is very interesting. An ENTP,
Yeah.
fine, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah,
I
no,
had the opposite experience, but I'll if
oh,
you if
really?
I
Okay.
don't forget, I'll tell you afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah, so all right, so the way I came to conclude about or why I made this decision is before I was Muslim, like I said, I was quite inquisitive. I was always contemplating about deeper things, like I would think about how the heck are we just spinning on a ball in the middle of nowhere? Like I would have these kind of thoughts, but no answers to them, right? So I was always thinking about those kind of things. I also used to sing and songwrite. So
Mm.
my like self-expression used to come through songwriting, but I wouldn't write about love songs and stuff like that. I would write like I would the concepts that I would think about would be to do with the world, like the state of the world, like the government, and trying to trying to inspire people through stuff that I didn't really have answers to. But I kind of, instinctively, I knew there was more to life than what I knew. So yeah, that's kind of when my mind started shifting, and I started to read a little bit more
What were you reading?
about Islamic books. I actually found the Quran. I read the Quran, and literally all it took was just one verse for me to know that this is not the words of a man. This really is something.
Okay.
But for me, Islam is just a really simple message that I think kind of it can be understood by everybody. It's
What's the message?
that it's Tawheed. In Islam, we the concept of Tawheed is that there's one God, and that we don't worship anything besides this one God. So there's one creator who created the universe, brought everything into existence, and that he has no partners in doing so. And so because of that, we worship him alone. And the simplicity of the message is what kind of attracted me because everything else is just so confusing. And I know ENTPs are capable of understanding quite complex subjects, but the fact that it was so simple and that is something that every human can understand strangely is what drew me to it. And I feel
Mm.
like the more I started to learn, the more I just started to fall in love with it. It kind of gave me direction because I was very directionless before Islam. I
Mm.
didn't know what I was doing with my life. It's kind of like it answered like deeper questions to life, like why are we here? How do we get here? All of that stuff kind of like intrinsically made sense to me. But yeah, just to answer your question, it was just because of the Quran. I read the Quran and it affected me in a way that nothing else had.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know
Interesting.
what that means for you. I mean, I don't know what your experience has been like, but yeah, no, my story is interesting. Being an ENTP is it's a bit unconventional. You don't really.
How old are you?
I'm 33.
Okay, and when did you convert?
When I was 21, so in 2012.
Wow. Okay, so
Yeah,
very young actually.
yeah, 20. Yeah, do you know what? It's funny because I started living this Western life and going out raving and doing all that stuff at a very young age because I've always looked older than I am. And so I was in a nightclub at the age of 12, right? I experienced that lifestyle. Yeah.
That's okay.
12. Yeah, 12. That's what I'm saying. So I already been through that lifestyle and it kind of got really boring to me. So I think
Yeah.
that's why I became interested in other than that lifestyle at a very young age. And it was really easy for me to kind of just leave it off because I don't know, it's weird. I just saw the falseness of it. Like in my personal experience, I saw how it's like temporary happiness. You know, it doesn't bring you, long-term fulfillment. It's like you're always chasing the next, uh, temporary pleasure. And it's like, I just knew there was more to life than that. You know, this system that oh gosh, I don't even want to go down this rabbit hole, but like the system that we've been born into, I personally believe that it's been intentionally constructed by, people who they don't really want the best for mankind. You know, they want to control populations and stuff like that. And I think, unfortunately for us in the West, we've been born into that system, and it's something that we're not even really aware of. But this is my personal experience, and so I kind of clocked that on quite early. And I just started looking out. I tried to start looking outside of what I knew and what was within my perception. And that's why I started reading a lot of stuff from the Middle East, trying to get different world perspectives on existence and stuff like that. So yeah, like I'm very open-minded. I've always been open-minded, and I think that's kind of why I took this path. You know, Islam. It resonates with my soul. Yeah, that's pretty much it. It just resonates with my soul, and it just makes me feel at peace. So yeah, I was going somewhere with this, and I
No, no,
started
no,
off
no.
with like an
I'm
end point,
enjoying the
and now I've
story.
kind of
Doesn't
forgot.
matter where you're going. I'm thoroughly enjoying the story.
And do you know what? I'm sorry, I talk so fast. I literally
No,
this
no,
is.
no. All good, all good.
But I'm interested to
Okay.
hear your story. Like, or is there anything? Do you have any more questions for me actually before I ask you?
I've loads of questions, but at the same time, I'm just only waking up, so my brain's not at full capacity. No, this
Yeah.
is a great conversation so far. I'm thoroughly enjoying the story.
Yeah.
Okay, so my first question
Mm.
is with your religion now, how conclusive and how open are you to like, like I don't like when you hear about ENTPs, like they have that stereotypical devil's advocate. I mean, like because they're investigating all the angles.
Yeah.
How much do you or do you not do that with your current religion at the moment? Like, is there still any like form of like continuous questioning and testing, or have you just like
That's a
totally
really good
settled
question.
on it?
No, that's a really good question. Are you recording this live, or are you going to like save this? Because I feel like this would be really good insight for people to hear this.
Uh, I think TikTok has a function to record.
Oh,
I
I
think
mean,
TikTok automatically records it.
yeah. Okay, so that's a good question, and the answer to that is because right, in Islam there is a foundation.
And by the way, I do not like I don't know anything about Islam. I
Oh,
like
okay.
so this is very educational for me.
Oh, right, okay. So yeah,
Yeah,
so in Islam, like the foundation of Islam is, like I said, something called Tawheed, which is the
yeah,
belief in one God. So for me, I feel like when you establish a foundation of something and there's no way of there's no conjecture, like there's no room for doubt within that foundation. When it makes logical sense and it's, a solid foundation, I think anything that goes beyond that, it kind of like when it comes to doubts, like you can't really doubt it, if that makes sense. Like I don't think I can doubt that there is a creator. Like in my mind, like the way that I make sense of this religion
it
is
sounds
that
like the whole premise actually doesn't allow for multi-angle views. The whole concept is just like do not multi-angle view actually. It sounds like the premise is just like there's one God, and then that's like the basic premise that you have to adhere to. But
oh,
then, like
okay,
if you think about like general NE activity, it wants to explore all kind of avenues, and so like it sounds
100%.
like you know what I mean. It's the exact
Yeah, yeah.
opposite of like an NE kind of philosophy actually when you
Yeah.
think about it.
So I've actually thought about this before, and like the conclusion that I came to is that any, obviously it's a perceiving function, right? So any is a perceiving function. You're looking at all the different possibilities. However, if we just led by any, we would never come to a conclusive, like there would be no definitive way to understand all that information. So we have to use TI to come to a conclusion and to make sense of all of the possibilities and everything that your mind is constantly running with. And so, yeah, for me, yes, it diverges off into different possibilities, but you always have to come to a conclusion at the same time. And that's what kind of reins in the NE. Because if you didn't, you would be all over the place. Like, you would be so flaky that you probably wouldn't know what your purpose is in life. You wouldn't, you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
I get him. That makes
Yeah.
100%.
So,
However, how do you know you're not using FI?
do you know what? It's a good question because I have thought about this.
Because it seems, when I think of religion, any kind of religion, I feel like there's more faith than truth, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, so I don't know, because you said you don't really know about Islam. So I'm guessing you're more familiar with other religions, which I believe they are more kind
Not
of like.
even familiar with other religions. I guess like just religion in general. Like, you know what I
Oh,
mean? Just
okay,
anything
okay.
that's kind of like.
So what is your background? Like, kind of, what are your interests? You know, like, what is it that you're interested in? Are you more like philosophical, like scientific?
No. All right, so I give you like a kind of. I'll start with the opposite of what you had actually. So
Okay.
I had. So I grew up in Ireland, and
Mm-hmm.
so I spent a lot of time with my Irish grandmother, who was like a Catholic. And
Okay.
so from very, very young, she was like the Bible, uh, Jesus, you know what I mean? She was heavy into Jesus and the Bible, and she got me into it as well. And so, like, I think like from the age of five and a half, six, I had actually like got into the habit of like praying to God every night, like the whole hail, you know what I mean? In the
Yeah,
name of
yeah,
the Father, you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
every single night, I'd never missed a day, never missed a night, no matter what the I was doing.
Wow,
Like
yeah.
clockwork, before I went to bed, I just like do a quick prayer and say thank you and just be like, what's up? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I don't know what happened. 18, I just started to not like labels. I
Okay.
not, which is ironic for somebody getting into MBTI, but like I just didn't like the labels. I just thought like I I thought it was very assumptive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so my perspective was just it was more to do with I felt like what's the word? I felt like a hamster in a cage. That's
Yeah.
basically how I felt like. So like if you have a hamster in a cage, like on one hand, like the
Just
hamster,
boxed in, like not really being able to use your own mind. And do you feel like your NE was suppressed? Maybe that's what it was. Like your NE was just suppressed and you weren't able to explore, kind of just having your ideas and your thoughts dictated to you. That maybe could be a stress point, you know, as an ENTP. So it's understandable if you would have rebelled against that.
yeah, I don't know if I would say suppressed, but it definitely started to like explore. Let's just say that.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
When you say like labels, I don't think MBTI really puts labels on people, you know. It's funny because like most people make that assumption. But
Yeah,
like,
I make that assumption.
well, yeah, I guess you could say labels more than putting people into a box. I think many people think it puts people into boxes, but it actually takes people out of the box because we naturally put ourselves into a box. Do you know what I mean? Because we're navigating through life with this perspective that we have, and there is an opposite perspective to that, but we tend to kind of avoid that perspective and it keeps us narrow-minded in our own one. And so like a lot this is happening subconsciously, so a lot of people are unaware of it, but they think that, you know, MBTI boxes them in, even though they're already boxed in by their own perspective, if that makes sense.
So,
So
what's
yeah,
your perspective of like being an ENTP at the moment? How has it helped you? I guess that was the meaning of my question.
um, okay, so this maybe I'd have to go back to when I was growing up because in my household, I was with a lot of J types. Like my sisters and my mum, they were J types. So I was kind of like the black sheep. So I felt very misunderstood.
I was told black sheep as well. I
Really?
always felt like the black sheep. I felt like
Yeah.
Kevin from Home Alone, honestly.
Really? Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah.
totally. Like I just felt like I was always the
Sheep.
one doing things wrong. Like I was the one, you know, my mum, oh, it's funny, it's a funny story. She had like set, because she was an ISFJ, my mum's an ISFJ. So she would have like set food in the cupboard for set meals and everything, but I would go in there and just eat the food. And this really used to really annoy her to the point where she put locks on the cupboard. And it made me look like a terrible person, but I would still manage to get my hand in there and just, pick out whatever I could. But yeah, just like little things like that. It's like I was always doing something that I shouldn't be doing because there was just so much structure and so much order. So I feel like knowing my type has allowed me to just accept myself. I think that's the main thing, like self-acceptance. Because when you're raised in a household that is constantly not shaming you, like my family didn't shame me, but just subconsciously making you feel like you're doing things wrong, like knowing your type and knowing that this is just how you are, this is intrinsic, like you can't help it and there's nothing wrong with you and there are other people like you. It was just very liberating for me, do you know what I mean? And that was also, I think that led to a lot of motivation to actually, to know that I actually have something to bring. I don't have to conform to anyone else's standards.
Yeah.
I can actually just go out there and do what I want and, reinvent the wheel if I wish to. I don't have to have these set meals every day. I can eat what I want. So yeah, I would say like self-acceptance, definitely, for me. That's how it's helped me.
Is self-acceptance, has that like been the end point? It's just like,
No, not really. Because I feel my religion gives me more self-acceptance, to be honest. But I feel like self-acceptance so this is where I'm going to get confusing now. The way that I see MBTI, I relate that to the physical self. A lot of people relate it to the spiritual self, but I kind of see it just as purely physical, like a physical tool to help me navigate relationships, like physical relationships in this world. So I feel like having self-acceptance has also allowed me to accept other people as well, because before I would feel quite rebellious, you know what I mean? Like I feel like, again, being an ENTP, I'm quite utilitarian. I don't really feel like I need people's input to do the things I want to do. But somebody's always got an opinion or they want to say something about what I'm doing. And so like I would become, I guess, quite combative against that. But yeah, I feel like understanding MBTI has allowed me to see other people's point of view and the way they see the world and the kind of stress that I could be bringing them. So it's allowed me to accept other people as well, which has really improved my relationships.
no, okay. And then between like your own self-acceptance and self-acceptance of others, is that, would you think that's the end point for you?
Um,
Or is there any other kind of purpose?
yeah, I think for me, I want to use MBTI for like self-management purposes.
How so?
So obviously knowing what triggers me, knowing what things I'm not really good at, and rather than showing up to a situation that I'm intrinsically not good at and getting stressed about it and having that affect my self-esteem, having like a logical understanding of why that is the case and how I can overcome it. I feel like MBTI does that. Knowing your function stack, knowing what you're inherently good at and what you're inherently bad at, and also what limits you and what helps you to develop. Like being consciously aware of that information, I feel like really helps you to manage yourself. Even though in the moment, let's just say if you're having an argument, sometimes it can be really hard to control your reactions or whatnot. That can be difficult to manage yourself. But I think through like having experiences, when you are showing up messy, you're able to kind of reflect on it and know how to rectify yourself with the knowledge of MBTI, because you can kind of pinpoint exactly what it is that needs your focus. I feel like I'm just really like waffling here.
No, you're not. You're not. You're totally not waffling at all.
Oh,
Like
okay, good.
you speak
Like
my
sometimes,
language. You're so ENTP 7.
when I done the Enneagram test, I got 5 wing 6. But now that I've been through self-discovery process with experts, I've kind of redefined myself. So now I'm looking at myself from a different perspective. So if I done the Enneagram test again, I would probably get a different result.
With experts, what did you do? Coaching or something? Or
Do you know Dr. Linda Behrens?
yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
don't know her, but I like yeah.
So Dr. Linda Behrens, she's the developer of the core approach. I don't know if you've heard of this. I done the interaction styles. So she looks at how you do what you do,
Yeah.
why you do what you do, and what is your worldview. And so obviously all these 3 different lenses, they will hopefully lead to the same personality type, but it's just a stronger model because you're not just looking at things from one perspective. I would definitely recommend you look into it because it does look at different lenses. And so, wait, you asked me a question and I forgot the question.
The last question I remember, I think, was MBTI usage. So you said
Like ENTP.
self-awareness, awareness of others, self-management.
Mm.
That's my last.
But then we got onto the topic about Dr. Linda Behrens, and I don't know how. That part.
Neither do I.
Oh, that's funny. But no, yeah. So I was interested to know like what your journey's been like. Like, what's your type? Like, when did you first encounter MBTI? Like, how long ago? What was it like? How were you before?
Okay, so I'm just gonna shoot, okay? Because like if I
Yeah, yeah,
that's
go,
the
go.
only way. All right, so like 20s. So I went through like a ton of different phases for like a lot of stuff. So when I was like younger, let's
So how
say,
old are you now? Sorry to cut you.
say again.
How old are you now?
I'm 36. I'm 36 now.
Okay.
So like let's say a lot younger, just up to maybe 18, 19.
Mm-hmm.
Like my whole like I net like there may have been like a kind of philosophical aspect, but like I never had like problems with focus or with getting things done or seeing things through or those kind of stereotypical ENTP-ish problems. I was actually very direct and very aggressive. Very
Okay.
like yeah, very aggressive. Always a leader and always like would be like pushing people. Like if anything, like maybe a bit too aggressive and maybe a bit too confident. And then I don't know between like 20 to 30, I just uh, almost totally changed. Started exploring with like many different fields. Like I was a designer, videographer, recruiter, teacher. Started I don't know how many businesses, like just loads of stuff.
Okay.
And then basically after a while, like uh, I didn't really like the outcome because like when you start so many things, basically it's just like there was a big follow through problem. Let's just put it like that.
Mm-hmm.
A totally big follow through problem, and then a totally big um, confidence and identity problem because I was like, what am I supposed to do? I kind of had this like, what the hell is my passion problem? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's anyway like similar to you or not.
Yeah, I've had a similar experience. Do you know, I think maybe that my experience with that is that I just kept jumping from job to job.
Okay,
I didn't really know like what my passion was. I didn't really, because I said this to you the other day, like I don't, well,
do you know
MBTI
now?
now, yeah, I feel like MBTI is my passion. Like I'm so passionate about talking to people and getting to know people and just understanding how they work. Like that is something very interesting to me. And I think it's because of the nuance in it. You know how like everything else, like I would find myself going from job to job because it was just so boring. Like I wanted to blow my brains out. Like it was so boring. Well, the jobs that I did anyway, because
What kind of jobs were you doing?
oh, just silly jobs, really. My first job was a telemarketer. So
Okay,
I was on,
interesting.
oh,
That was one of my first jobs as well.
oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I worked for a company called Craftmatic. It was an adjustable bed company. It was an American company, and literally we had to talk on the phone. I would speak to about 200 people a day, and you're saying the same script over and over again. Like this is very SI. It's very out of my like. It just drains me. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I got a lot of good people skills from that job though. You know, I ended up getting quite good communication skills and whatnot, but it was just so repetitive and so boring. So that was my first job. I was also a bingo operative. Worked in retail. I'd done like the door-to-door sales and hated that as well. Even though everybody was like, "You're so good, you know, you can make so much money," and I'm like, "But I don't even care about the money. I just want to feel good. I want to
Hmm.
be like, I want to be motivated. I want to feel good while I'm doing my job." Um, so yeah, just hopping from job to job, and it wasn't until I found MBTI that I actually realized that the reason I can't find anything is because my passion is in understanding people, and I never saw myself as getting into therapy or coaching or anything like that. To me, I didn't even understand what that was. I didn't think about coaching as something that I'd be interested in, because I don't know, I just didn't like the thought of having to deal with people. Maybe because I didn't understand them, but I think because MBTI has allowed me to understand people, I find it a lot more interesting talking to them and you know, helping them with their problems because I now have a solution for it. I feel like MBTI gives people solutions to their problems. So when you actually realize that you're an ENTP, like how do you feel like that affected you? Like what kind of effect or impact did that have on you?
It definitely started like a self-development track,
Yeah.
a self-awareness track. Sorry, definitely
Mm-hmm.
started a self-awareness track. Whereas like before, I would say like I wasn't very self-aware. Like I thought it was one thing, but then realized I could be another. And then like after learning MBTI, there was still a little bit of confusion, let's say. And so it 100% started a self-awareness track.
Mm.
And so my approach with MBTI is like actually like what the reason I asked you like what does it do for you, and like you mentioned like self-awareness and awareness of others. I actually feel like for the most part, like the main tool for MBTI for me personally, and challenge this, right, is
Yeah.
like defining the point A.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Or no?
When you say point A, is that something specific? Like, are you
No.
talking about?
Uh, it's not unspecific. So a better way to put it is like MBTI is like one system for understanding yourself. Enneagram is another system for understanding yourself. But the best system that I actually found for understanding myself was
Mhm.
actually like uh and was actually like more Taoist based, in the sense of just something very simple is just like yin and yang. Like
Okay.
once like it that's kind of where my mind's I started with MBTI, 16 personalities, and then like cognitive functions,
Mm.
Enneagram, and then some other kind of stuff. But then, like, really, like, the thing that settled it for me the best was like yin and yang. I really like the yin and the yang.
Okay.
And so, like, what I learned about ENTPs is like, for the most part, like, unless you've like proactively developed it, in my opinion, like, is a very feminine energy.
Oh,
So
okay.
when I looked at my like my 20s to 30s, I felt like I was very yin, in the sense that like I was just constantly learning, constantly exploring. Like there was a small part of me that wanted to win and wanted to succeed and do well. But really, I think like deep down, what I really wanted to do was just like constantly learn and explore and test and explore different angles and avenues, different possibilities. And so when you do enough of that, like you satisfy your learning need. But for me, at the same time, there was like probably something deeper that was like, okay, something, there's a lot of stuff that's happening in my life that, you know, is not exactly what I want to produce. And what's the reason for that? And
Mm.
when I first got into MBTI, I was like, okay, I kind of let it justify like the results I was getting in my life, because I was like, this is how I am. And this is like, I'm supposed to do this. But then after learning yin and yang and just realizing that it was kind of just like point A was just like my yin. Like I'm predominantly based in yin, and so like it's just like this receptive, chaotic, learning energy, a creation energy, very creative energy, which even though it has a lot of benefits to it, I felt my point A was yin, and so like the whole point for me to like learn any kind of personality system was just to become whole. That's like my whole point. And so like if I know like I'm yin based, and then like and I can know the nuances of that using MBT or Enneagram or whatever else, well then like my whole point is just to like do the work to fulfill the other half, which is like to be a bit more yang. And I think like the way it works is like people who are probably predominantly yang, they need to like relax and probably be more open minded and explore and develop their yin. But I think that's how it works. That's was my perception, and is my perception currently.
That's really interesting. I mean, I don't know much about the yin and yang. I know it's obviously opposites. I don't know if there's like a whole theory around it, but that's really interesting, and it shows you the importance of paradoxes. You know, opposites. Like even though they're
One
completely,
hundred percent, one
yeah,
hundred percent. So
it
there's
doesn't.
like this contradictory nature, in which case, like on one hand, you learn you're an ENTP and you find the reasons for like your behavior, and you get some sort of validation and justification for how you are and the way you do things, and that gives you some context in terms of like how you might want to operate in the world. But I
Mhm.
feel like it's only half the picture. I feel like
Yes.
unless you develop that other half, I for me, I wasn't able to get the correct results by just being an ENTP. You know what I mean? By just like engaging in any all the time. I guess it's kind of the way, like you said, without like finding your religion, like your life felt a bit empty.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
And
that was
so
kind
like,
of my
yeah,
experience. And any any is a funny one when, especially if it's operating unconsciously, like you can appear like one of the craziest people, one of the most woo-woo people out there. Because yeah, it's just the way that your mind's operating in that unconscious way. You're just like a leaf, just kind of blowing about in the wind, just whatever direction. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes that does get very unfulfilling. And I think, like what I mentioned in my story, that's why I ended up kind of questioning there must be more to life, because they can't just be this. I can't just be floating about here and there, going from job to job, going out every weekend. And like the
yeah.
concept of yin and yang is a really good one as well. It's a good analogy.
Like I felt as a kid, all the way to maybe 16, or actually, basically until I stopped praying, which is
Yeah.
basically until I was like total yang. I was like a powerhouse.
Mm.
Get people to do shit, would see it through to the end. Like I was like from I think like 12 to 16. Like I had one focus. I had one focus was which was being a musician. I was in a band. I was like writing music. I
Oh,
was constantly recording, getting gigs, and
yeah.
like my whole focus was just music and the band, and that was it. Like I didn't have like a million things going like the way I guess like a stereotypical ENTP would have.
I feel
But
like
then,
ENTPs are very creative. A lot of them express their nuances through music as well. I've noticed that.
yeah, I agree. They're definitely very creative. So that's kind of my perspective. I
Mm.
feel like it's a great indicator for your point A. But then, like, but just being an ENTP and just like living in that kind of framework, I think it's just like shortchanging yourself. I think like the work is literally just finding out like, are you yin or are you yang? And then like doing the extra, and then the growth point is literally like, okay, if I'm like super yin now and I'm just receptive and constantly learning, I've
Mm.
got to like change my prerogative, and I've got to develop this yang side.
You
And
know
then
what? Oh, sorry, go on.
no, go on.
No, I was going to ask you if you've heard of, Dario Nardi. You're familiar with Dario Nardi?
Yeah,
Yeah, so he's done a lot of work. You might, because you say about you was that dominant, you didn't have a problem with following through with stuff type of ENTP, which is the complete opposite to me. He's done some interesting work in subtypes. So he's looked at like one type and seen like there's different variations for that one type. So
four subtypes.
yeah, are you familiar with that?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, so you literally sound like more of the analytic ENTP. I think I'm more holistic. And I think that's really interesting because it just makes more specificity. Like, you can't just look at ENTPs in one way. There's obviously different ways that they kind of show up. That could be due to whatever, different external factors and their situations that have made them into what, like habitual situations where they've kind of internalized stuff that they've experienced and that's become part of who they are. But yeah, for me, I'm definitely more holistic. I am free flowing. I'm probably a lot more friendlier and a bit more softer and fuzzier and maybe more people pleasing than the typical ENTP.
Okay.
I am now, not so much when I was younger. To be honest, I was a little bit more hardcore when I was younger. Just well, there's a long story to that as well. I think when I became Muslim, I became really just really kind of skeptical about people's like man-made theories and ideas and stuff like that. Because for me, divine knowledge was the only knowledge that was worth knowing. To actually to have knowledge on how your creator has created this universe and laid out certain prohibitions and legislations for man to actually live a life that is going to be a happy one and live in harmony with each other. For me at the time, when I was a new Muslim, nothing other than that made sense. But what that done for me, having that's still a very narrow perspective, because what it done for me is it made me separate from like my non-Muslim friends. So I remember at the time kind of just not really being around a lot of non-Muslims. And I love my non-Muslim friends, but because obviously we lived two different lifestyles, they were still doing all the stuff that I kind of left. And yeah, at the time I was just very skeptical about the ideas that they had and the beliefs that they had. And that's another thing that MBTI really helped me with. It helped me to understand that people just function in a particular way, like their brains operate in a certain way, doesn't like whether they're religious or not. Do you know what I mean? And that made it very easy for me to start opening myself up to people again who were not practicing Islam. Because
Do
the
you feel,
reason
do you still feel like predominantly skeptical now, or no?
skeptical of what exactly?
Just general. Like,
I'm definitely skeptical of like man-made theories, yeah. But MBTI, I feel like is universal knowledge. I feel like it's that it's actually truth, you know. It's like universal truth. So I'm not skeptical of MBTI, but philosophy, you know, like yeah, things that don't really have any, like there's no, I guess, foundation to it, or it doesn't really lead to an objective truth. I'm skeptical of them type of concepts and ideas. I just feel like they cause a lot of confusion, and there's no, you know, like TI likes to make sure everything is logically consistent, and that it has like definitive answers. Yeah, things like that, like philosophy, it just questions things baselessly, and you don't really get answers to it, like objective answers. So I feel like I'm just anything that doesn't give me an objective understanding or an objective truth makes me feel uncomfortable.
yeah.
If that answers your question. But yeah, I'm not as skeptical as I was before. Before, I would literally, I probably was, you know, really quite dismissive of people in terms of like believing in anything outside of divine revelation. Like that was really narrow-minded of me. But at the time, it just made sense to me, you know, because I think the
Mm.
reason why I adopt that mindset is because my life prior to Islam didn't make sense. Do you know what I mean? And it just left me to feel so empty and not really knowing my purpose or why I'm here. So when I found Islam and I realized that my purpose is to worship my creator, which is what we believe as Muslims, that all made sense to me. And so nothing else really mattered. It's like, okay, that's irrelevant. Don't need to know that. But then when I found MBTI, I was like, wow, this is like a connection point for me now to actually, you know, make relationships.
It makes sense. Though I still do wonder if your relationship to your religion is it predominantly TI or FI based.
Definitely TI based because in
Why is that?
Islam, because to be honest, it's logical and emotional. And this was a theory that I thought about when I started learning about cognitive functions, how every single cognitive function actually leads people. And this is just my view, you know, I'm not trying to enforce this upon anyone else or anything, but I came to this conclusion that every single cognitive function will eventually lead people to this ultimate objective truth that there is a creator. And that's what it was actually designed to do. I'm actually trying to establish my own
Okay,
consciousness.
no, give me the basic.
What I like to do is I like to compare foundations. In Islam, obviously, we've been commanded to worship one God. So how do we actually do that? We do that by taking information and making decisions. So we've been commanded to like reflect on the universe, to look at the signs, the sky, the you know the ocean, the aquatic life, everything that exists, and to come to understand that reality that it must have been created. So that's the first part, processing information to come to the conclusion that there is a creator, that this didn't just come from nowhere. The second part is to evaluate that information and make a decision, which is what we do with our, you know, decision-making processes. And so once you've come to the conclusion that there is a creator, the next part would be to worship him because he created you. So he deserves your worship. Nothing else brought you into existence. So this is just
What's
my conclusion.
hmm,
And that's how I kind of made those two connections. So with all these Muslims that are pushing back on my ideas, I will tell them the basics. You know, the reason I'm telling you this is because our religion doesn't dispute psychology. It actually validates it. You know, there's nothing wrong with MBTI. There's nothing wrong with these man-made theories because it's universal truth and it makes logical sense. I don't know how that's landing with you, if that made any sense whatsoever.
no, I get the argument. I
Yeah.
don't know if I'm sold on it, but I get what you're saying.
What are your doubts about it? I'd like to hear like your feedback.
Okay, sure. So, and by the way, you're an ENTP, so I'm just gonna like put out ideas. I don't have any like um particular judgment, like a
Okay.
particular conclusion, let's say, but
Hmm.
just these are like the thoughts popping in my mind as so my first question is the conclusion to there is a creator.
Okay.
Like how that there's some steps that that have been skipped there. Like how did you do that?
Okay. So can I ask you first, what is
Hmm.
your belief? Like what is your actual belief? Do you have a belief?
Yeah, yeah.
What do you believe? Like what do you believe about existence? I think it would just
I
help me to understand more if I knew that.
the context.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I believe. essentially that the universe is a continuous game of learning, and I'm here to play. That's about it.
Okay. So for me, I feel like this universe came into existence.
Okay.
Yeah, like I feel like for me, it's just like a real simple belief. Like there's no, you don't need to go to Harvard University or have any eloquent type of explanation for the existence of this universe. I feel like it's really simple and it's really straightforward. And I feel like it's something very obvious as well. But because there's so many ideas that have been, well, so much information and so many ideas that exist in our time that it can prevent us from connecting with or even realizing that this is such an obvious truth, that this universe, it must have a creator, because organization indicates an organizer. Uh, you
Yeah,
know,
but there's also the other half, which is chaos, which is like that's basically the other half of the argument.
when you say chaos, what would you give me an example of chaos? Like, what do you think chaos is?
Well, if you have like five ducks in a row, that's order. But then
Hmm.
like you can have like the exact same five ducks all over the place. Or you can have like not even one duck or five ducks. You can have like a duck and then an ant and then like a brick. You know what I mean? Not
Yeah.
everything follows. Like
But
if
do you, sorry, go on, go on.
yeah, basically, once you believe in the concept of order, like I don't see any choice but to believe really in the concept of chaos either. Both to me exist.
Yeah. But do you think chaos also indicates like somebody who designed that chaos?
No, that's like the exact.
Because,
It's the whole. Like once I think of chaos, if you think fundamentally about what chaos is,
mhm.
like it's literally the exact opposite of somebody like purposely snapping their fingers or making. You know what I mean?
You know
It's
what? This might shock you, but I don't. I understand. Like when it comes to the concept of chaos, I don't think we really know what chaos really truly is. For example, I would say something that is chaos is you throw a bottle at the wall and it becomes a frog. Something that is just completely irrational, something that just doesn't exist. But we know that if you throw a bottle at a wall, it would shatter. And you could say that is chaotic, but it still follows mathematical laws at the same time. Like there's like a certain point.
yeah, no. So this is where like my perception would be different. So like firstly, like maybe chaos is too definitive of a word, but maybe it's a better word for me is opposites.
Hmm.
Opposites. So like if it's known, well then there's also the unknown. If
Yeah.
there's God, well then there's also the ungod. You know what I mean? So like yeah, my basic premise is opposites.
Okay, no, I think opposites is really important. But I also think that opposites are the creation of God, and God is uncreated. So I personally believe, I don't believe that God came, was created. So, and, to think that there's not a God is kind of a contradiction because then there wouldn't be
Well,
any.
that's exactly what I believe in, contradiction, which is why like it's very
But,
difficult. Like when
like,
it comes to like conclusion in terms of religion,
yeah.
I like I don't have any arguments against it, but that this is my like
No,
block, let's
I
say.
can see how you've come to like this understanding, but at the same time, like so from my perspective, I think that we can only really comprehend this world and what exists within it. Like the concept of there being no God is not something that we can comprehend because even God
And then
is outside
also
of our.
that point there of comprehension. I
Hmm.
think it goes back to my like hamster in a cage, which what I meant by a hamster in a cage is like the hamster, it can't comprehend anything. It's just a hamster in a cage. And so like I feel like when people tried it, I feel instead of saying when people, I felt like when I was like uh religious and when I was had a very more definitive belief in God, I felt like the reason, ironically, I felt like actually my belief in God was doing it a disservice because I had an ego, I had like an assumptive, like even to pretend to comprehend it was just very assumptive and egoic, which was actually in a way the exact opposite of what I should do if if there really was. I'm not saying I concluded that there was or there wasn't, but I
Yeah.
just thought Yeah, I just thought it's like there's this idea of relativity. You know
Right.
what I mean? The relative is extremely important to me because like when I think of like a hamster in the world, like you think of like a small hamster in a cage, and then you think of the world, like relative, like what to the knowledge of the world to what that hamster knows is obviously like exponentially just he doesn't have the capacity to learn it. But then like when you think of like the world and then like the universe, I mean, relatively speaking, it's an even bigger gap. And so I just felt like very
Are you
presumptive.
saying, I just want to make sure I've understood right. So are you saying that in order for you to believe in a God, that you'd have to have all encompassing knowledge, that you'd have to understand all sides of every argument, you understand both polarities? And is that what you mean? Just to know every.
No, I'm
Oh,
saying in order for me to believe in God, it's not a truth and it's not a logic game. It's a faith game. In which case, I'm not engaging in TI. I'm not trying to understand it logically or theoretically. I'm just going with it. It's almost like a feeling because that's probably like the best I could hope for. Like if I'm trying to like rationalize things, that wouldn't make sense for me because there's just too much in the world or too much outside of the world, outside of the like in the universe that's just like totally unknowable. Unless you go there, unless you jump in the water, I mean, how can you know really? You can't. In which case, like be going for any kind of logical argument for me personally for God, it's just it seems like doing myself and God a disservice because how the fuck can I know? You know what I mean? It's just like imagine a fucking hamster's brain. The hamster's pea brain just really caught me. I always felt like that. And so
okay.
when it comes to believing God, I just thought actually the most honest way for me to do it, if I was gonna do it, wouldn't be like a logical thing. It would be an emotional thing. It would be a faith-based thing. In which case, truth, I just have to forego that, and that's the game.
Okay, that's an interesting perspective. Like what I would say back to that is, you know what I was saying about how both logic and emotion leads to God. Like
Yeah,
the way that I've understood that is, okay, so if you say that logic, belief in God is kind of, faith based, emotional based, is that what you said?
honest belief in God is emotional based.
Okay, so do you think it's like faith, emotional to come to the conclusion that the device that you're looking at right now, that was brought into existence by someone who had knowledge, power, and intent? Would you say that's like an emotional conclusion or a logical one?
What do you mean?
So like your phone,
Yeah.
the design of it, like the all the metrics of the phone, the size, the I don't even know about technology, but all of the the ins and outs of the phone, how it operates and everything, that was created by someone who had knowledge, power, and intent. Like, would you say that is coming to a logical conclusion or an emotional one? Because although you haven't seen the person, you could somewhat say there is like faith involved. You haven't seen the person, but the fact that the phone exists, it's logical to believe that somebody obviously brought it into existence. And it's kind of the
Well,
same.
ultimately, I would be inclined to say ultimately an emotional one because I don't know. I can only know that like I can take my logic as far as like the people in the world and like even maybe put on a logical wrapper that somebody had to do this and do that. But outside of that spectrum, like my honest answer, if I'm gonna be completely honest, is like I don't know. I don't know the rules.
So you
Like
don't know
it,
that someone brought
like
the phone into existence and that it was designed by someone who had knowledge of how to bring it into existence.
to a certain extent, like I
Yeah.
can walk the road to a certain point, but then at a certain point after the road ends, there's a cliff. And then that cliff is just basically an unknown black area that's just unknowable. It's completely speculative. And then and I have to recognize that at this point, like the only thing I can really do is speculate. And once I'm at that point of speculation, I mean, how much logic can you apply, you know what I mean, to kind of gauge information that you have no clue about. You can only like do it emotionally.
Okay. So like what we was talking about earlier on, like
Even
talking
with
about.
even with
Sorry.
maths, when you
Yeah.
said like even with something like maths, and then you have like logic and science, and 2 plus 2 equals 4. You know what I mean? Basically, I don't know 2 plus 2 equals 4. That's my basic premise.
Wait, hold
That
on, wait.
sounds so stupid, but like 2 + 2 = 4 to a certain point of like the human understanding. But then, like, my question is like, can you like even just imagine? Like, imagination is the key to all knowledge for me, because like, can you just like even imagine, like, if you were writing a script, if you were writing a movie, like you write a world where 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4? Can you at least like imagine it? And my answer is usually yes. I can at least like speculate, okay, or play around and just be like, actually, we go into this world that's on the other side of the universe, and
Hmm.
here the rules of maths do not apply. Here there are totally different rules that we do not understand. They are the unrules,
You know
which
what?
is
It's so interesting. Like just hearing your thought process is so interesting because like even though like somebody else observing our conversation, they'd be like, "What the heck are these two talking about?" But I know what you're saying. Like I can follow what you're saying. I can follow your thought
yeah,
process. You know what? I think what I would say to that, with my
mm,
belief, obviously, this is just my perspective. I would say there's certain things that apply to certain contexts. So I think when it comes to like observing tangible creation, that requires a tangible process that is going to give you an understanding of that thing in the context that it was designed to be understood, if that makes sense. And then thinking about all of these imaginative things and stuff, that is designed to help you understand that context for what it was intended for, to be understood in that way, if that makes sense. I feel like when we start cross-contextualizing what is and what could be, that's when we get confused. Do you know what I mean?
but that,
Like,
but this is also but this is also like my main. And also, here's the thing, right?
yeah.
What is the need to conclude anything? Life is an infinite game of learning, and I'm here to play. Like, imagine the opposite. Imagine it was not this, and I was just like completely wrong, which is fair, fine. You know what I mean? I'm only speculating. Imagine like life is a finite game, in which case, like there are only so many things to learn, and what happens is like you play it, and then you learn the outcome, and then that's it. That's also a possibility, which I recognize, which is fine. But if you entertain the opposite, which is it could be an infinite game of learning, in which case you're always learning and always there's just constantly this more like if I think of God, I think of like this infinite thing that's just like constantly like I don't think it's like I guess what it comes down to is like my need to conclude and understand and apprehend something
Mm-hmm.
is not gonna like is not gonna dominate like
You'll need to go and explore the
no,
possibility.
no, not even my need to explore. So like there's two things, right? Imagine like God is like a finite under, understandable thing,
Mm-hmm.
which it or God may or may not be, I don't know. Like I have no label around it. Or God might be this infinite thing that's just constantly changing and it's like or it could be both. I don't know, right? But assuming it's one or the other, if it's like this infinite thing, like its being always supersedes my need to understand. I might want to understand, I might want to conclude, but you know what I mean? God is God. I don't get to choose. I'm
Just not
not
what
entitled to understand, which I feel like a lot of people feel they are, which
you
isn't
mean
a
like
bad thing, but
do
like
you mean understand God? Like you're not entitled to understand.
yeah, exactly, yeah. Maybe I am, maybe I'm not. In which case, like your argument or your premise that like we are actually designed to understand God is very interesting because like that's something to consider as well. That's
Yeah,
very interesting.
a lot of the time as well. I think because sometimes when you have new conversations, it's all new information that we're not having even processed yet. Do you know what I mean?
Mm,
And you know, thinking about maybe after this live and contemplating on, I'll think about what you've said and you'll think about what I've said, and we'll be able to process it. Because I noticed this is what happens. Like when we was on the last live, you said something really interesting, and afterwards I really processed it, and it gave me really new insights. And it wasn't until a day later or so that I got these insights. So when you initially have a conversation, sometimes we come with our, frameworks that are already so established in our mind anyway. And as a TI user, we're both going to combat, another person's perspective because we can only understand things with our own logic, if that makes sense.
Also, I say these things only just as honest questions. I feel like actually speaking to somebody that's very like into and conclusive on their religion and where they get their power from. I feel there's a lot of value from that. I'm definitely not close to that for one moment. But like for me to like join the club, or for me to actually like be sold on the truth, like there are certain things that I need answered. In which case, like
100%.
being able to ask you, and you being able to like just be like,
It's
that's
really,
you know what I mean. It's very valuable.
I just
Meeting
find
somebody
it
like you is actually valuable for me. There's not that many people. You know what I mean?
I find it really funny how like this was initially about MBTI and we've ended up on religion somehow. I feel like that always happens. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Oh, I forgot what I was going to say now. I was just going to say something and I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, what was it? Wait, what was you just talking about? I've just lost my train of thought completely. Oh yeah, that was it. So, you know, as Muslims, like as a Muslim, we don't actually believe there's any compulsion in religion. You know, we don't say like you have to believe. There's so much misinformation about Islam. Like we don't ever say you have to become Muslim or you're going to the hellfire, blah blah. We don't say that. This is why I say like Islam, it is a logical religion because it presents explanations for God's existence and people can either accept it or not.
Mm.
Kind of Islam has its foundation, which is one God. There were prophets and messengers sent to mankind to connect them to that God when they start straying and worshipping stones and idols and things that can't actually do anything or help them in any way. And it's literally just a simple message. That is literally all there is to it. But there's obviously more that unfolds from that foundation. Like there's legislations, prohibitions, but that's it. You know, there's no compulsion and people are always going to have questions, but it always comes back to that same thing, that there is a creator, that creation doesn't exist. It doesn't come into existence through nothing, and that there must be a higher being sustaining the universe. I really feel like in the time that we live in, there's been institutions like university that have been, they've thought of like concepts to try and take people away from their source, their creator, which is a very simple concept. They've made it sound really eloquent so that they can deceive people with their speech and stuff like that. But the concept of believing in God is just a really simple one that literally a 4-year-old can understand. And like I said in the beginning, that was why it's so appealing to me, because I feel like every human, when it comes down to, you know, removing all the layers and the conditioning, they can really agree with that concept that they've been created.
Which leads me to like my second question. I mentioned like there's one question. One is like the assumption for why or how you concluded that, and the second one was like the value of it.
Okay.
Like assuming, right, and it's a big assumption, which I don't think we've concluded, or that is that easy to conclude, let's say. But like assuming, right, for whatever reason, just a thunderous bang happens, and then like God appears, and it's almost undeniable. Let's say we all just get this crack in the spine. It's undeniable, and we're like, okay, there is a God, totally. There is a creator.
Mm-hmm.
My second question then is like, what's the value of like worshipping?
Oh, okay. That's an entirely separate rabbit hole. I don't know.
Okay, yeah,
I mean, obviously, just to keep it real simple, as Muslims, we believe that this life is a test and that the end goal is either the paradise or the hellfire. I don't really want to have that
okay.
conversation because it's
No,
pretty
no,
deep.
no, no, no. But
You know
like,
what I mean?
fair enough. It's a test.
Yeah,
Is
we believe
your
it's a
answer?
test. Yeah, we believe it's a test because when you really reflect, again, when you don't have the belief in God, it's hard to have this conversation because, you know, when you're not connected to God, it's difficult to kind of see his blessings and everything, like how this life has been developed and designed to sustain our existence. Like all the things, like if you look at even how your nose is designed, the fact that you have holes that are bigger at the bottom and, you know, canals that go up more narrow at the top, that is, you know, indication of a designer with all-knowing wisdom. Imagine having small holes at the end of your nose, like trying to breathe, like that is impossible. Even like your elbow.
But then I get the test. Like, I'm not saying I agree or that I believe in it, but like I get the test reason.
Mm-hmm.
But why? But why is worshipping like passing the test?
Because humans naturally, the way that we've been designed, again, this is the Muslim belief, we've been designed with this inherent, like this. Okay, do you know what? I'm going to give you an example that might help you understand better. You know, in personality type, so MBTI, it talks about the concept of all humans being designed with this natural inclination to behave in a certain way. You have these inclinations that make you behave, you know, for example, like a fox. If it doesn't have the opportunity to hunt, to whatever it was designed to do, you're going to see like quite aggressive behaviors. It's going to start behaving in ways that are not really healthy or could be quite dangerous if it's not able to operate and function in the way that it was predisposed to. So we believe as Muslims that humans, they've been predisposed to actually worship God. And this is something that is objective, like all humans have that. And when they are away from that, they because this is like in the realm of the spiritual, it's not something that is that easy to understand. There's layers to this, but every human has been predisposed in a certain way, and that is ultimately to submit themselves to their creator. But when they don't, they start acting in very unhealthy ways. For example, making
That's interesting because I don't want to cut you off,
that's all right.
but just as I'm thinking of it, I have the exact opposite belief. What I was talking about between like your point A and point B, like he's just like unregulated and unchecked.
Sorry, the video would kind of stop there for a second. I didn't catch what you said.
Is it is it
It's
back now?
yeah, it's back.
Yeah, which and try to not forget your point. Maybe you finish your point first, actually.
Oh no, that's okay. I've got my point in my head. It's okay.
Okay, just don't forget it now because I didn't want to interrupt you, but I also didn't want to forget mine. Yeah. So basically, like when I said like MBTI is great for like defining the point A, but then like once you establish and understand and recognize the point A, the job is not to stay in point A. The job is to understand the point B, which is usually an opposite dimension, and work towards that so that these two paths can connect. If I was just like one way is just like when I was like learning MBTI, I was like, okay, ENTPs are they're theoretical, they like ideas, and it's fine to just like be all of the to do all of to do a bunch of ENTP stuff. I actually didn't find like for a little while I felt like a little bit validated. I'm not gonna lie, it's just like okay, this gives me explanations to my behavior. But then like really what it was for me, it's like more that it helped me identify the growth points that I needed to do, which once those growth points are like established, like a lot of those things, they're not like like they're not ENTP kind of things.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so
I
like
mean,
another way to think about it is like, let's say you're trying to do something in life, whether it's like build a business or create a family or something. Like I think like you need both that divergent power and like you need the convergent power as well. Like, so if you have a teammate that's like the exact same as you, versus like if you had a teammate that had like complementary attributes, that I think a partnership is better when you have like complementary but opposite traits and attributes. And
yeah.
so if you can like establish those, if you can do the work to establish those by yourself, I think you become much more powerful. Like if you look at types
Yeah.
that are like a rocking shit in the world, I feel like some of the best people are actually the most difficult to type because like they've done that, or what Jung call, I guess, like the integration, the individuation. So basically, I guess like it's just another word for individuating. You want to
Okay.
like work on like your shadow, on your opposites, and so like once you've established your point A, like the goal, the whole purpose for me actually is change, is understanding how I am now, how I want to be, and then like change. And there's always going to be some element of like the ENTP or whatever type you are built in there. But then it's that opposite attitude that's integrated that for me is like what riding the lightning is. Once you have that, I think like for me that's where my power comes from.
Yeah.
Like when I'm rocking and rolling, I don't think people like if people can often mistype me. Like when I'm talking now, I'm just like in learning mode. I'm in like I can't even keep track of my own brain. It's more like life is literally just about yin and yang. That's it. Like that's my essential philosophy, yin and yang. Like if I feel like I've been too yin and I've just been like learning all the time and I've just been like exploring, well, that's an imbalance for me. I don't like imbalance.
Okay.
That's the essential premise for me. Imbalance for me has just not led anywhere good. I feel like when
Imbalance.
like yeah, I don't like imbalance.
Yeah. No, I think, imbalance is like the main cause of a lot of illnesses. Every human has to be balanced, it's one of the main causes of like a lot of chaos that happens in the world. But it's interesting that you say that, because I also have that same perspective. Like, I'm so high on paradoxes and opposites, and
Mm.
like my perspective on like well, kind of the way I see the world is that, well, the way I see myself, I can't really see the world, but the way I see myself is that I have a spiritual side and I have a physical side, and those two are opposites. That's like the yin and the yang.
Mm.
And I feel like they both need a different criteria for development. I feel like my religion nurtures the spiritual side, and MBTI nurtures the physical side. Because a lot of people, I did mention this in the beginning, a lot of people, they see MBTI as quite spiritual, but I genuinely don't think it is. I feel like it is literally limited to the physical human, because everything we understand about MBTI is come about through observation, like scientific method and analyzing brains, and all of that is like physical stuff. So we can only understand the human to a certain degree. Kind of like what you said, there's only certain amount of information we can know. But when it comes to the religious side, I feel like that can only be, understood through divine revelation, something that is outside of the human ability. And so, yeah, I would say that's my yin and yang. It's like the spiritual and the physical. And again, they both have their own criteria for how they need to develop.
Mm.
But
And I
yeah,
like that, to be honest with you. Like,
yeah,
I like my honest take here is like, no matter what argument I could give you, like I'm not gonna unconvert you. You know what I mean?
yeah, of course. And I'm not going to force anything upon you either. I
No, no,
respect
no.
your
It's it.
point.
No, my point is that I wouldn't try to unconvert you. My
Hmm.
point is that you seem to have one side that is just intuitively very open-minded and very, like, even when I'm speaking to you like about your religion, which is obviously a very personal thing, like
Yeah,
you take it very open-mindedly. But then like, which represents a lot of yin, in my opinion. But then there's also like this opposite side, which is very just like, I won't say closed-minded, but like in like it's firm. It's yeah, it's firm. You know what
yeah,
I mean? Which is
yeah,
good yang. So I like that. Like for me personally, if I could, like, I'm definitely not closed to religion. I feel
yeah,
like finding a religion is like a great balance point. But then
yeah.
like there's almost this, there is a, like, I do recognize that if I was to do it, it's probably more of this faith-based thing, which I probably have to work on a little bit, because for me to tap into that, it
Yeah, so
takes it
it's
takes
a
a bit
very
more.
it's a personal journey. Everybody adapts to it differently. Everybody finds God differently. Like, even in Islam, even though we believe in the same thing, the journey for everyone is different. Everybody comes to believe in this creator differently. Some people do it very early in life, like myself, some people very late in life, and the whole journey is different for everyone. But do you know what I would say? Because you still think that it's kind of like more emotional and faith based.
Mm.
In Islam, we don't really use the word faith. We use the word, it's called iman, because
Mm.
I think the
What
term,
does that mean?
well, iman is the condition of the heart. So we don't believe that intelligence is just purely in the brain. We believe that the heart has intelligence as well.
Mm.
I mean, you might think that as well. I mean, a lot of people say emotional intelligence, logical intelligence, but we say that the heart, the intelligence of the heart, is actually more superior to the brain, because the brain can actually it can gaslight you sometimes. It can
No,
make you,
yeah,
it can
but
convince
then
you.
I would still also, like, it's probably not the best word, but like I'd be more inclined to be like emotional based intelligence.
Yeah.
So like even like heart is probably like like instinct is another one,
Uh-huh.
another form of intelligence. Like,
Yeah.
which
Would you say
maybe it's even the three of them. You know what I mean? Or maybe there's even more. There's like the instinct, there's the heart, and then there's the brain. Like, I feel like once connecting all three is important for me.
Yeah, they're intrinsically linked. They are. They're all
Mm.
we need all three of them, and some of them we're better at than others. And that's why I believe that everybody comes to their journey to God differently, because they're being led by different criteria. But I definitely don't think that Islam, or I don't say I think because I know, as a Muslim, for me it was a very logical realization. It was like, wow, that makes so much freaking sense. And then it was the heart that followed after that. Like, the heart kind of submitted, because I'm not emotionally intelligent. I'm definitely more, I sometimes over rationalize things. But I think since being religious, that has allowed me to open up my heart a little bit more. I am now more, that might be why maybe I'm coming across as like faith-based because I'm now more, in line with what actually means something to me in terms of my religion. But when I was finding Islam, it was a very logical process. I was reading a lot. There's so much, it's an ocean of knowledge. And I would say, don't just, read into it. And I think that you yourself would see that it's not just faith-based. There is a lot of logical points to it that lead to a conclusive truth, which for me was just really mind-blowing.
Like I say logic and emotional, but like I guess when it really comes down to it, I don't really even fundamentally believe in logic.
Okay.
I know that sounds stupid, but like
Elaborate. No,
it go
I want to hear this. Go on. I'd like to hear your perspective on that.
all right, so it comes back down to like the whole, like you walk down the road. You walk down the road and then like you come to a certain point where there's just like a ton of speculation. And for me, like it's just like a matter of proximity. Because like we live in a world and we can like see what we can see and we have like tangible data points, we feel like actually our knowledge, like the known is more than the unknown. But like that's only because of proximity. But actually, like if you're to like to zoom out, this for me, it's just I can't see how there's more known than unknown. You know
Oh
what I
yeah,
mean?
100%. I agree with that.
In which
Yeah.
case, like once I walk to the end of the road, and then like there's just like 99.99999% of like speculation.
So is that what makes you so doubtful? Is that the speculative part is more than the known part?
Say again?
I said, is that what makes you so doubtful? Is the fact that, speculation and conjecture that kind of overweighs or outweighs, the known? Just being aware of all of the possibilities and that what we don't know just
I'd say,
keeps you in a state of doubt.
I'd say it's one factor. So I say
Yeah.
it's definitely one factor.
So
Like,
do you think that we can, as humans, come to objective truth? Like something that's known? Do you think that that is something that humans are that is possible for humans to do?
um, I've, it sounds like a cop out and a contradictory answer, but my answer is like yes and no, which brings me back to the whole point of like it's life is an infinite game of learning, and you can choose to play or not play.
Okay.
Which doesn't really answer your question. I know it sounds like a cop out.
I know, I'm baffled. I'm like, oh, okay, how do I come back to that? Because I was actually going to ask you, do you know what I was gonna ask you? Like, if you say no, then you'd have to question whether your answer no is an objective truth. Again, it's like Tom and Jerry, like the paradoxes, it's like constantly intertwined.
Ultimately, you're not wrong. Ultimately, I would like border on the line. It goes down to like being an agnostic.
Okay. So you're
Uh,
not like completely closed off.
Agnostic, but I'm also emotional. So optimistically agnostic. Like a true that might want to think that. Sorry, you know.
Yeah, you're back, yeah.
Like I guess like true. I don't know about true, but like optimistically agnostic in the sense that the stupid part of my brain can't get enough information to conclude, but then the emotional part of my brain would like to believe that there is a God, something like that.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Do you know what's really funny? I've noticed the whole time we've been on live, which is like an hour and a half, we've not really paid attention to the comments. Like there's people commenting.
Yeah, I
And
know.
I'd like to
By the way, I really like talking to you. This has been like a very fast conversation. Thanks for
you know
coming
what?
on and for showing up.
That's okay. We literally just went into the abyss. Like we started off somewhere and ended up, I don't even know where. But no, it's been really interesting. You're the first person I've ever spoke to on a live, literally. I've not actually had conversations like this with anyone before. And it's been really interesting to me.
Technically, you're the first person also. This is the
Oh,
fourth,
really?
fifth live, and I've never like talked to anybody on it before.
Yeah, this is something that I think would be really good for ENTPs because, like how you said about procrastination, NENTI, if you're too in your head, you just procrastinate so much, right? It's one of I think going to that third slot, FE, and actually communicating with people and kind of sharing your ideas and perspectives, even if they do seem very woo-woo and very out there, they will eventually lead to something. Do you know what I mean? So it's nice to share perspectives. And yeah, I think it's just really important for ENTPs to do that, because they can then get the experience that they need to maybe even possibly have the opportunity to bring their ideas into existence and to make them something that is tangible. I don't know if you're into have you into like business or anything? Do you have any like business ideas
Yeah,
or
I'm
anything you're working on?
100%.
Just some of your ideas just feel like you can't even explain them to people. It's like they're so divergent and like, oh, because you know me, I'm trying to establish my own coaching service for like for Muslims. Like I said, I'm trying to introduce them to this personality type stuff, which I think I'm going to get a lot of pushback on.
All right, back to being an ENTP.
Yeah.
My question is that your only business? Is that your only project?
Yeah. It's the only thing that I can really have. Like, it's the only thing that I have like a set vision for, that I can actually see something happening with in the future.
Like I have gone through a lot of like I have gone through a phase of like where I had like too many ideas. In which case like I was spread very thin, and like I had was maybe trying to make a too original connection, in terms of like I had like MBTI and was trying to like use it for another thing, which is like not a stereotypical MBTI thing. I guess kind of the way you want to use MBTI for your religion, something like that. I was trying to like bring too many things together.
That's literally what I'm trying to do right now. It's difficult. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
difficult.
but then again, it came back to me. It came back to understanding that I was just like too yin. I was just like, because like now I feel very concrete.
Oh, interesting.
Another question. At the moment,
Yes.
with your business, you just have the one business and the one project, and like that's your focus and that's it?
Yeah.
Or
Because
do you,
yeah.
or like, do you honestly have like competing ideas for your time and attention, and you're still building a framework, or
You know,
like you know?
I'll be honest
Because
with you.
previously you said like you didn't know what your passion was,
Yeah.
but this sounds like contradictory because it sounds like you do. So I'm just trying to like,
That's very true. It does sound contradictory. You know, I think it's because MBTI is still all unfolding for me, and I'm still like, I learn new things every day, which builds my passion. It's been like a process of finding my passion, if that makes sense. Again, like this is a new experience, and it's made me even more motivated to kind of, you know, really move forward with it. So I feel like the more I actually do, the more I find my passion within it. Like all I know is that I'm really passionate about understanding people and helping people understand themselves, because I feel like, especially within because I know what it can bring to my Muslim community, I feel like that is why it's my only focus. Well, not only
do
that,
you
but
like previous, and this is like, all right, so like when you were engaging like in other business ideas and other business ideas or other projects or whatever, do you think you had like a similar experience of feeling like very intensely passionate about it, and then like at the end, like it would fizzle, or no?
the initial idea, I'd be like, yes, I want to learn that. I want to learn this. I want to learn that. And then I'd actually do it. And it's like, no, this is boring. Like I brought a sewing machine because I was going to start, sewing, making clothes and stuff. I brought a bunch of sewing books off of World Books. What is it? World of Books, that website that sells really cheap books. And they're still in my bookshelf and I haven't even read them. It's like the initial idea, it motivates me. But then when I'm actually doing the thing, I'm like, no. And I think that's obviously because it's something tangible that I have to keep doing. I've had so many ideas that it's not connected to actually having an impact in people's lives. I think my passion comes from impacting people's lives, and that's what kind of what
Why do you think that?
motivates me. Just because, like, I don't know, it's so to see someone changing before your eyes. That is very fascinating to me. Like to see somebody go from one thing to the next, or to be someone who's very doubtful of themselves and then see how they just completely excel in life because of maybe something you said to them, or to see someone who they just have a low self-esteem and then you can actually speak, you can inspire them and show them the
That
worth.
word is an interesting word, fascinating. Like is that the core thing? Is that the core driver?
What, sorry?
So when I asked you like why impact was such an important aspect, and then like I guess it came back to like because when people change, it's fascinating. Is that
Mm.
like to be fascinated? Is that like the
No, I wouldn't say that's the core drive. I think the core drive is knowing that my advice has had an impact, because it makes me feel like I've been useful, like I've actually contributed something, and that's had an impact in a positive way. Like seeing
so what's
my
useful?
useful, yeah, I would say useful, yeah. I like to be useful, but not in a practical way. I don't want to have to do the work. Like I want people to do the work themselves. Like I like to inspire, to enlighten, to, people a lot of the time they're just walking around unconscious. They don't know the potential that they have. So to be able to draw that out of them, that for me is like, I think that would motivate me the most because I love to see people win. I love to see people acknowledge themselves and more than they think they are.
So what's the reason for being useful?
The reason for being useful.
Like,
I
yeah,
guess
what?
it has like a ripple effect. If you start off with inspiring people, with whatever you want to inspire them with, and that then feeds into society in a way that can, affect it in positive ways, you're going to see the effects of that. And hopefully it could
So has
lead to
that been your pattern like all your life to to be doing useful things for society,
no, only when I
or
started, only when I started working on myself, when I started like personal growth and stuff like that. Because before, I mean, I weren't even useful to myself. I would literally make very self-destructive decisions, be out every weekend and just getting off my head, puking my guts up somewhere. That's not very useful. So there's no way that I would even be thinking to be useful to other people because I was just lost. But when I started seeing that this world, there is a lot more to it than the limited worldview that I had at the time. I started seeing how I can actually feed into the world in, whatever way I was designed to. And I think everybody has that. And the way that everyone does that differently as well is also very fascinating. It's interesting. Another word is interesting. It's all very interesting. And interest drives me. Like if something interests me, it drives me towards that thing, which for me is being productive. Like if you're being driven towards something that you're interested in, who knows where that could lead? It could lead to many different avenues and many different
this
opportunities.
this word interesting
I
is
love your
interesting
questions. I love your questions. I love them. Go on.
because like when you say interest, I immediately think back to your previous word, which is fascination.
Okay. Do you see a difference between the two?
No, I don't.
Does there need to be a difference?
Yeah, actually.
Why?
All right, so like okay, um, I could um yeah, this is probably me projecting or like telling my story, but and
Yeah, go
because
ahead.
like I obviously have a bias towards the way I hear it, but like you can listen and then challenge me. Actually, the more you challenge me, the better because why not?
Yeah.
But I felt like if I did stuff that was like too much, that was driven from a head-based desire, whether it was like interest or fascinate, I won't say with those words, but like yeah, so on one hand, I'm doing something like because like I'm interested in it because it looks interesting and because like it's something new for me to for my brain to kind of play with. But
Mm.
then and just when I'm only led by that, which is often
Okay.
because I'll gravitate naturally towards that than anything. When I'm only led by that, I feel like a lot of stuff can pop for me in terms of like what I can put on a plate because like for me a lot of stuff looks interesting to be honest with you like
Yeah.
you know. And so like my standard for yeah, the bar is too low. Like if it's just like interest, if it's just like fascination, if it's just like theoretical or conceptually driven, the bar is too low for me. Whereas like
Okay.
if I like was to increase the bar, like I feel like there isn't a problem with like having too many things on your plate.
Oh yeah,
Usually
100%.
when you hear of ENTPs, usually when you hear of ENTPs, it's like that's the problem. We're spread too thin. We got too many projects going on. There's too many things to plate. For me, that's not the problem at all. The problem is like there's too many things on the plate that have been put there when the bar is too low. There's too many low value things.
Yeah.
Like if I can find like high value things, well, then I want to actually put as many of those things on as possible. In which case, like there's only going to be a few. And like being conceptually interested is obviously like is one value, is one requirement. but like instinctually, like I guess like natural kick is a better one. I
Yeah.
feel like the best way is like riding the lightning. It's just like
Hmm.
what is gonna make me feel like I'm riding the lightning. And
Yeah.
when I like think of from that perspective, like obviously it'll be something that's theoretically interesting for me, but once it adheres to that standard, my power in terms of like following through and doing it properly and like executing and not procrastinating and not overthinking like is completely different.
Mm.
That's my perspective.
I
So my
think
question is like, is MBTI just like interesting for you, or like do you like are there instances like where you get like an inherent natural kick from it? Because I feel like that was very important for me. I neglected that part. Like when I sell, like
yeah.
there's instances like when I've been a recruiter or a telemarketer and I didn't like selling because like I was following a script and because like the deal size is just like too small for me and like there was just but like when I sell, like I've basically narrowed it down to two things that I actually get like that make me feel like I'm riding the lightning. One is when I sell and I can put a deal together. Like when that happens and I close somebody and it's like for a good chunk of cash and that cash can like I can continually aim for bigger sums. Like I get high. Like
Mm.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's just like this natural high as if like somebody's jumping off a plane. I'm just like if you've ever seen that scene in like Breaking Bad where like Walter White, have you ever seen watched Breaking Bad?
I never watched that, I never did. I don't know why. I've never really
All
been a
right,
television person.
there's a scene in Breaking Bad where the main character he does like this deal with this drug dealer and he goes back into his car and he's just like he just feels alive. I guess
Yeah.
like the key aspect that I'm trying to say is that I want to do that makes me feel alive.
Okay.
Like that's the driver because like I
Mm.
feel like life is just like the key, the highest quality, and so I just want to do things that like make me feel like I'm just like born again, like you know what I mean, that I've just like been given a breath of fresh air.
Yeah. Do
And
you feel
so
like you can find
sales
that?
one, sales deals, sorry deals, not even sales but deals, and stand up. Like when I'm performing, doing like on stage and a joke hits, like
Oh, you do stand-up
it's
comedy? I didn't know you was a
yeah.
comedian. Oh, okay.
My next stage after like I get a bit better, I'll probably like build personal brand around like stand up.
Yeah. Yeah,
Like right
definitely.
now I just do MBTI or whatever, but it's literally there's no rhyme or reason for it. I just do it just to do it. But
Yeah.
really like I guess like my next move will probably be more stand up based because yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it was really interesting to hear like, your perspective and how MBTI, like how it drives you, like, or what. I mean, for me, I don't think it's just purely just interest. Again, like I mentioned about how you have all these ideas, but they're hard to articulate sometimes. Like I can see, like with the Muslim community, because we're living in the West, a lot of, who I'm connected to, we're living in the West. We don't really have a lot of opportunities. Like Muslims, they do get kind of discriminated against a lot. And so we end up having to rely on our, incomes and stuff by going outside of our community, which is good anyway. But unfortunately, sometimes we don't really get treated the best. So I feel like for me, the MBTI, helping people develop themselves and, just reach their best selves and doing what they were designed to do, that's how they're going to operate at their best and potentially revolutionize the world in whatever way they were designed to. I feel like that will be really good. This is one of the things that drives me about MBTI is helping people to achieve their best self so that they can feed into the Muslim community and, give us more opportunities. So yeah, I guess you could say it's really, more opportunistic as well as just being interested at the same time. And just there's so many different things to it. I don't know. It's really thrilling to understand. But what you said
I like the
about
word thrilling.
yeah,
This is a different word that you've used. This is the first time I've heard. I like this word thrilling.
thrilling.
This
Yeah,
thrilling word I feel is a good balance to like fascination and interest.
yeah.
I like this word. In which situations like have you like conducted like an MBTI coaching session or like where have you felt the thrill is
Okay,
my question.
so yeah, this is what I was gonna say. You know how you was explaining like the thrill? Like I feel like you've had more practical experiences knowing about MBTI. I haven't. I've been more secluded. So whilst yeah, I've had conversations around it, I haven't conducted any coaching yet because one, my current situation, I'm quite isolated. I'm away from my hometown. I started learning about MBTI whilst I was living here, which is in London. And obviously, my interest in it has developed whilst I've been here. And so, when it comes to conducting coaching, I want to do that in real time because there's so much information that gets filtered out when you're behind a screen. So I don't know if that's just procrastination, but I want to do it in real time. I want to be there present with people because there's so many pieces of information about a person that tells you about their core type, you know. So I feel like that for me, again, you know what you said about setting the bar, like the bar is too low. Me conducting online coaching is like that's the bar being too low for me. Like I want to do it in real time, have all different people there, us all engaging, because I feel like you'll get more out of it. But I don't have that opportunity right now because of my current situation. So I don't think I felt that thrill that I know I have yet to feel and experience. I think when I get to that point and I'm able to like be in a real time environment with people, I think that's when I'm going to feel the thrill. Do you know what I mean?
So like public speaking, like speaking on a stage doing it, or
Oh gosh, that terrifies me. But yeah,
yeah,
I would
yeah,
like,
okay, yeah, yeah.
I would like to do it, but oh, I don't know. I've been so again living my lifestyle as a Muslim for like 12 years. I have been. This is why I got mistyped because I was living a very introverted lifestyle, which obviously made me see myself as an introvert. And so I've just been really secluded. So that's become kind of part of my developed self, which now I find it hard to do things like go up and stand on, even though I know I could do it if I was to actually just do it. But I overthink too much because of how my life has been for the past 12 years. Do you know what I mean? But my core NE wants to get out there. Like it's literally burning to get out there and to experience stuff. And also I'm scared of experiences because I don't want to do things wrong. But yeah, I do have this like burning, like this desire to just feel that thrill, like you said. Like I totally understand where you're coming from. You know, I really resonate with that. But I just have yet to
Yeah,
experience it yet. Like it's all in my mind at the moment, but I feel it.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean? I
yeah.
feel it 100%.
Very interesting.
Mm,
You know what I think it is? Like how I've kind of like structured it in my mind.
mm.
I feel like yin and yang is a great yin and yang again. It's basically yin and yang. Yeah, a good way to kind of like utilize it is actually then using like other archetypal structure like Enneagram or MBTI.
Yeah.
So my all right, so this is all right. So this is basically my take, right? So let's say at the moment you identify as like, or you have like this best fit type idea that ENTP is how you are,
Hmm.
correct?
Yeah.
All right, and so like this is the point A, and then this will give you pros and cons because like it's got negatives and positives. It'll give you very creative ideas. It'll give you like it'll probably make you very perceptive, very good insight, and being able to like explore and help people as you said. But then like the getting out there and doing it and then taking like consistent, the massive action.
Hmm.
I think like another like I don't think ENTPs just naturally unregulated like are a great archetype for doing that.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? In which
Yeah.
case like if you're gonna use like Enneagram, like 7 is great for like learning, exploration, testing, being receptive, being creative. But then like the power, the force of actually doing it and getting out there, it's not particularly like it needs help from you know what I mean? It can't just like stand and like the team needs to be built. In which
Yeah.
case like a great archetype that I feel like ENTPs can tap into or that can source from is like 8 energy.
Is that like the real dominant type? The eight is like really dominant, very decisive. I don't know much about
Yeah,
it.
it is. It is, but the reason I think it's very useful is because like if you think of like a 7 energy type, if you think of like an ENTP, like the real problem with an ENTP and or for a 7, like the root neurosis is like fear. That's what
Oh,
it's all about. It's just like they don't want to do it wrong and they don't want to get trapped in doing something that's potentially like not the correct thing. You know
yeah.
what I mean? And so like fear is like a big problem.
So true.
But then like if you look at a type 8, like type 8s are often like characterized as being fearless because they're just a courageous type. They live for the fight. In which case, like if you like can balance, if you can like and source from like the archetype that just literally lives for challenge, well then I feel like it really offsets. Sorry, it offsets that problem of just like constant fear, and then like creating, and then having your NE create escape routes so that you don't follow through and then like not take the action. Like type 8s like will fight. Type 8s will never give up. There's just this never give up kind of like fight till the end and get it done energy that I think is really important to source from.
Okay.
It's more about testing. It's more about testing the idea of integrating a point A and a point B. I feel like that's the more important thing to do, because it doesn't even need to be Enneagram or yin and yang, let's say. Because you could be like, okay, I'm an ENTP, which is my natural state, but your natural state is only half your story.
Yes.
And this half of the story is very interesting because there's another half that you need in order to like
To become
to
a
ride the
balanced
lightning.
person. Yeah, you need to
Yeah,
become.
exactly. In which
Yeah.
case, it's not going to be like an any dominant type. It's probably going to be like an ESTP or an ENTJ or like an INTJ or some other archetype that is more convergent, and not just more convergent, but like is like predominantly courageous focused.
Yeah,
You get me or no?
that's really useful advice, because this is one thing that I do struggle with is procrastination and it's fear. And I can see how, just using that perspective, it can, yeah, I feel like it can really help to kind of push me out of that. I think could be really useful. But the thing is like
I
actually
don't think it's
executing
advice.
it.
It's more like it's a creative suggestion for you to test.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, again, that's it. It's
Like think
about
about it like
testing.
this: if you are running your business now, and you might have some idea for the week,
Yeah.
if you had like one strong core type 8 ENTJ or ESTP just like dedicated to helping you for the whole week, like the outcome is just going to be inherently different.
100%.
It will be different. You know what I mean? If you just have like somebody that doesn't have fear of what you're experiencing and they're just like beside you, being like, this is what you do, this is how you feel when you do it. I feel like
This is why I need to do this more often. I need to make connections with people. Hopefully, I stumble across one day, someone who can actually help me execute. Because, yeah, the ideas, they're just,
but it's also like context, because like when you're in like yin is great. I actually feel like yin energy is like creative, it's perceptive, like there's so
I'd
much
like to know
value from it.
more.
That's why we're addicted to it, because it's just like we're learning all of this stuff. It's very like it's great. It really is great, but it's great for this one thing.
Yeah.
But when you try to do the other thing and you use this particular energy for this function, that's where the mismatch happens, and that's the problem. Have you heard the rhetoric of like you tap into your TI like TI is like a great growth point for ENTPs or no?
Yes. And I was going to ask
Yeah.
you the same question. Like, what's your perspective on that? Because you seem doubtful about it.
I don't like it personally.
Okay.
Yeah.
Elaborate.
Because why?
Because it keeps you in a state of procrastination. Is that why?
Yeah, essentially.
Mm.
Essentially. Essentially. That's basically why. I don't like it. Because I feel like you have the idea and then like you want to do the idea. Like for me it's not even about doing the idea. Like the idea is just a car. You know what I mean? And this is like my how my prerogative changed, because I used to get like so focused on like which car do I want to drive? Which idea is the best for me? I need to understand the car, I need to understand the idea, and then this is like, you know what I mean? I get very fixated on like which is the correct idea and then what is the correctness about the idea. If you know what I mean.
Okay. It makes sense that you was mistyped as an ENTJ. Like,
Okay.
do you feel like you have a problem with TI?
No, I used to love it. I honestly
Okay.
just used to get like so encapsulated into it, and I could like, yeah, like I've gone through like phases of just like splitting and splitting and splitting hairs and really categorizing things and like building a framework and waiting and waiting and waiting until like this framework was perfect. But then I realized like in order to like make it happen, like TI wasn't a very useful, like it was useful for understanding something, but it's not particularly useful for getting the thing that I want, which is the thrill of the ride. Because the thrill of the ride comes from action. Like that's what it is for me, action. And in order for me to take action, TI was just not a good function for me, because like TI, if you think about it, is just like this constantly questioning function, in which case like the whole thing like is just an attitude of constant doubt and skepticism. In which case, when you take an action, you don't want that. You want confidence. You want like dumb powered confidence, where whether it's SE or TE, whatever you want to call it. But you like, functions aside, you don't want to be in an attitude of doubt when you're trying to do something, because you end up won't doing it. You know what I mean? It's kind of like when you said like you want to make sure you understand it better or be able to apply it for your community better. Like I feel like that's an attitude of doubt, in which case, like if that's running in your brain, it's probably not gonna like getting to action will be a lot slower. But like when I take action, it's almost like it's almost like I go into one room and I understand the room, and the room's purpose is for like learning. In which case I can switch on TI and be like, okay, I can question and be skeptical. It's kind of like the way I'm talking to you right now.
Yeah.
I can like, I've got a free Saturday morning. It's fine. You know what I mean? It's free Saturday morning. I can engage, I can question, and I can kind of like let it run loose.
Yeah.
But if I have to do something later today, like I just can't, like I have to like, I almost have to change my prerogative and value being wrong. Like I like there's a sentence that I always say to myself, often wrong, never in doubt. Which is the opposite of TI, because TI just loves accuracy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, this point is just, it's really hitting deep. It's really interesting. And it's really enlightening as well, because literally everything you're saying is what I'm currently experiencing. And I don't know if that's just because, again, because of my current lifestyle, and I am so isolated away from people that I know. And let's just say if I was around people who I do know, maybe I'd feel more comfortable to actually take action. But again, is that just me being procrastinating? I'm not sure. But I feel like I need to have that mindset a bit more, because, you know,
I would argue possibly a lot more, because like because ENTPs are predominantly yin. In which case, like yin is a questioning, it's a learning, it's like an investigative function. You know what I'm saying?
And
Probably a lot more.
it needs that external interaction, because that's it. Yeah, when you're sat on your own, this is why why I don't get anything done, because TI does take over. And I just get caught in this loop. But when I'm actually in an environment, like right now talking to you, I feel like it's been very productive. Like, it's opened up a lot more loopholes. But yeah, I feel like having that interaction, like that direct interaction with people and being present, I feel like you just get more done that way.
Yeah. The way I like to think about it is like, it's understanding when to have a preference for accuracy, in which case being doubtful and being skeptical and questioning and looking for the correct answer is very important. So it's when to have a preference for accuracy, but then also recognizing when to have like a preference for confidence.
Yeah.
And so like when you have a preference for confidence, or when you have like a preference for like the thrill, which is like what I was getting back to, like riding the lightning. Once I know like my preference is to not like be in my head and like intellectually have the correct answer, but it's to be there and like feel alive, essentially. That's like my ultimate standard. Do that makes me feel like ridiculously alive, as if I've just been born. That's like my high standard. Anything that passes that bar, like it's on my plate. Anything that's not on my bar, in terms of that, like it might get entertained for a second, but I know like it's not going to last, so I'm not going to invest too much time in it.
Okay.
But once like I know, okay, this is gonna like make me feel like, electricity has just surged through me, well then like in order to go to the shop to buy the currency that I have to pay for it is with confidence. And anytime like I have to like switch on to confidence mode, well then the accuracy just it has to go off. In which case the best way to turn that on is just to be like, I'm actually seeking to be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like I have like being wrong is totally fine. It's like the cost of it.
Mm.
Whereas like TI, I don't think it likes to be wrong. It's searching for like being right and questioning and making sure like yeah, it's an accuracy based function, isn't it?
Yeah, you know what? You're making me realize a few things actually. I think one of the reasons maybe why I am stuck in this TI loop is because, you know, as a Muslim, I follow a religion, right? And I'm trying to introduce something into a religious community. I feel like I have a huge responsibility. So at the same time, I don't feel like I'm really entitled to that thrill yet. I feel like I have to take this serious and really engage TI to make sure everything is established and accurate before I can even have that thrill. So I feel like that's kind of why. I just feel like it's a huge responsibility. But I know that the end result will be quite thrilling. You know, when I see people thriving and, you know, just being authentic and not allowing people to dictate their decisions. Because, you know, one of the reasons why I got into MBTI and why I started to take it so serious, I'll tell you a story. It's quite a personal story, but when I was a new Muslim, I got influenced into making a decision that had lifelong consequences that I'm still suffering the consequences of now. And that was to get married, right? So I didn't actually want to get married as a new Muslim. I'm still finding myself, you know, I'm still establishing my connection with my creator. But at the time, I was in a completely different mindset. I was very open to other people's advice because I thought they knew more about me than about the religion that I have just accepted in my life. So I was very susceptible to people's advice and their, you know, just learning from them. So one of the things that you're not allowed to do in Islam is to, you know, you have to get married. You don't have boyfriends, girlfriends, and whatnot. So people were telling me you should get married. It will make you a better Muslim and whatnot. So I ended up falling into allowing people to kind of influence my decisions because I thought that it would make me a better Muslim, you see. And so what came about is that of that is a divorce and my children now being raised without two parents. You understand? So this is why I'm so like why I take it so serious is because I want people, you know what? This actually goes back to the question you asked me about, is it just interesting to you? No. I feel like people need to be able to take control over their own lives and make their own decisions and not have their perceptions painted by other people because you don't know how that's going to affect them. Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't know how even if you had the best experience in marriage, you know, you saw your two parents had the most loving marriage and you want that for yourself and now you might want that for someone else. So you might think, oh, do you know what? Get married. This will be the good... But that happened to your parents. You don't know anyone else's lifestyle and kind of what they've been through. Anyway, I'm kind of rambling here. But yeah, just allowing people to take control over their own perceptions and to make their own decisions, to have that autonomy is really important to me. And if I had an influence in that in any way, that will also make me thrive. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'd love to see people just taking control over their own lives and not having it dictated by other people, which may have potentially have quite a negative effect on them and on their well-being and whatnot. So, yeah, I just feel like it's a big responsibility that I just can't really... I don't have time for thrill right now. It's quite annoying because I want to feel that thrill. But, yeah, responsibility for me kind of at this point is kind of coming first. Because any is not responsible. Sorry?
Say that again?
Sorry, say that again?
Well, what's interesting about that is like I actually feel like those two ideas are not contradictory, but that they go hand in hand.
Sorry, what two ideas?
Thrill and responsibility.
Oh, true. Very true.
Because like I don't want to use this archetype too much, but like if you think of it like a type 8, I feel like type 8s like are autonomy and control driven and are like an in charge kind of type.
Mm.
Like responsibility and like protecting the innocent. And yeah, I feel like it is like they're a fight type that wants to like fight for justice or do the right thing, essentially. You know what I mean? Like there's some impulsive nature to it, but it's definitely like like when you say like have people take control of their own lives and not make like bad decisions, like I don't think of like 7, or I don't think of like, yeah, I think more like of order. You know what I mean? I think more yang, I think more 8 archetype and energy.
So what, do you think it sounds like I've got like 8 energy? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it does.
Really? Oh,
Yeah,
that's interesting.
it sounds like you have some 8 energy, and that's actually like in many ways like it might be similar. Like for me that's very much where the answer lies.
Mm.
If I'm like just too yin, if I'm just too learning, it's just not a
It
the
gets
best.
really boring, doesn't it? It just gets so boring. It does. Like
Yeah, it does.
constantly,
It
yeah,
does.
constantly
One
questioning
hundred percent.
everything.
It 100% gets boring, and then that's what happens. Like the thing that I've been interested in, it fizzles. That gets boring, and then I hop to a new thing, and it's just this cycle of just like hopping and changing, and nothing really ever changes because like essentially you've just lived in your head. But
Mm.
then like I feel like your motivation for like and this story of like helping people have more control and order, like that sounds like more eight to me, in which case like that should be tapped into. In which case like to feel that, like in order to do that, like if you think of like typical eight kind of like enneagrams, like they're usually, I don't know, one that comes to mind is definitely like an ESTP or something.
Okay.
ESTPs are like often eights, but they're also often like action types and thrill types. Like
Yeah.
doing that makes you feel alive and having order in your life are actually like, I think they I think they actually go well together. They're not
Mm.
contradictory. Even though, yeah, I don't. I'm not saying like be reckless
Yeah.
and and do whatever you want and just and get thrill and get cheap thrills there. I think
Mhm.
that's like more seven energy. Like there's
Okay.
doing something for thrill, for the thrill of the novelty, and there's doing something for like the thrill of feeling powerful.
Okay.
Yeah, which is
Yeah.
interesting. You know what I
I
mean? I
don't.
think it's an important distinguisher for me personally. Like, I feel like the first premise to like to test yourself for to see if you agree or if you disagree is if you feel like your point A is all that you are. In which case, like you're an ENTP, you have like these certain functions, and these functions are just like your world, and you're supposed to live in this world.
Mhm.
That's like your that's for me like the first premise to test. In which case, you have to agree or disagree. But then, like, if you disagree and you're just like, there's more to me than this particular limitation and maybe only half the story, it's like an easier, natural place to gravitate towards, but it's still only half the story. Half my
Mm.
other story is going to take, is like, it's like half the story is relaxation. In which case, you're an ENTP, you're unchecked, and you're just like, your cognitive functions are ENTP based. Half your story is like relaxation. But then, like, the other half is like tension. And so, like,
Yeah.
half of you gets a free ticket. You get a free ticket to the show, to the ENTP show. But then, like, the other half of you is the paid ticket. You literally, like, it requires, like, some work. It requires, like, conscious effort to do and to be.
Mhm.
And it's like both the paid show and the free show, the relaxation and the tension, it gives you the proper dynamism to, like, on one hand, be perceptive, and on the other hand, have good judgment.
Mm.
You know what
I
I mean?
like that. I like that analogy about the paid side and the free side, because it's funny. Like when I could give knowledge away for free all day long. People say to me like, you should charge people for this knowledge that you're giving away, and I'm like, no, it's fine. Like, I want people to know. I want people to understand that I just give it away for free. It's nothing to me. You know, more knowledge can come. It's fine. But having to actually execute that knowledge, no, you need to pay me now. This is effort for me. Like, I'm not giving this away for free. How does
I
that?
guess they're just more like ideas that have helped me, I guess. I don't know if there's much rhyme or reason to them. Like,
Mm,
I'm sure a lot of MBTI practitioners or like Enneagram would just be like, no, you're an ENTP, you don't understand how it works. That's fine. But for me, like, I'm just continuously like testing and trying to break the idea and then seeing if it works for me or if it doesn't.
yeah,
And for me
it's really
personally,
hard.
like, too much TI, it just leads to procrastination and overthinking for me and just hell,
Yeah.
you know?
No, I'm so glad I've spoke to you because that's really, it's just, even when you mentioned it a couple of days ago, it just got me thinking differently. You know, it was really enlightening. Um, Maybe going to set me in a new direction. Maybe, I don't know, should I go in a new direction? Am I ready for that? Maybe the going in a different direction that has a different energy, maybe it could be useful for me though. But no, I'm so glad that you mentioned that because it's not something
Here
that,
is here is a test. Here's a
yeah.
test. For the next week,
Hmm.
see if you can operate predominantly with often wrong, never in doubt.
Okay.
Like for 1 week, see if you can, and just test it and just see like the result. Like anything you do, like if there's like a if there's like a consideration for, I want it to be accurate. I want it to be true. I want to know what I'm talking about. Try to flip it. Try to actually like consciously flip it and be like, I'm actually looking not for like the accuracy, but like my value is actually just confidence. And the cost of confidence is just like, I'm probably going to be wrong about this. You know what I mean? And that's fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You know, like, so when it comes to MBTI, I feel like I don't mind being wrong. Like, if somebody was to test my logic, I would actually be happy if somebody was to say, look, you're not seeing things. Like, I'm liking the things that you're saying to kind of combat what I'm saying. I like hearing a different perspective. But I feel like with MBTI, there is like, again, it's like kind of universal truth. So I feel like because this is something that I'm trying to execute, I feel like I need to get it right, which is not allowing me to think that I'm wrong. And because this is consuming my mind, maybe it's just like, do you know what I'm trying to say? It's just kind of.
I understand what you're saying, but then like it goes back to like, like as soon as you say universal truth, like I feel like you're valuing the accuracy. I feel like you're valuing truth. You're valuing epistemic logic. Do you know the difference between epistemic and instrumental logic?
No.
All right, so like there's not just one form of rationality. There's different forms, right? So like the two most basic forms of like rationality and logic is like one is epistemic, in which case like all the logic is literally like geared towards finding truth. Like truth is like the metric that you're going for. But then like instrumental logic doesn't actually value truth at all. What it values is like the result, the goal. And so one is like logic in terms of steps to achieve your goal, but then like you may or may not like actually value truth. You just like value your goal, and like the steps to achieve your goal is what you call rationality. But then like if you are epistemically driven, like you may not actually value your goal. You're looking for the truth wherever that might be, because that's your value.
Okay.
And so for TI is a very epistemic, logic-driven function. It's not necessarily a goal-driven function. It's a truth-driven function. Assuming you have the truth, assuming you're actually looking for truth anyway, like from that presumption, like you need enough tools to do it. In which case, as a human being, we are already very limited, right? There's already like a severe limitation in terms of like finding truth, and like you can't just do it theoretically.
You know what I mean? No, I agree. Yeah.
In this case, like you need feedback. You know what I'm saying? You need feedback. You need like to test, like continuously testing. I don't know if you've read any Karl Popper. You know Karl Popper?
I've not heard of him, no.
So like in the MBTI community, like most people like, they like Carl Jung. Carl Jung is the dude that people like. But then like for me personally, like I think Karl Popper has like the best attitude that I could hope for, which is just like you acquire what you think is like your best guess of the truth. But then like once you have it, like you recognize that this is your most updated guess, and your job once you have it and you've like acquired your most updated, most educated guess is to then test it and then put it out there and then try to break it to see if it actually holds it, and you're just in this continuous process, in which case it goes back to this like life is an infinite game of learning and you either want to play it or you don't.
I like how you keep coming back to that.
Yeah, because like just like that's how I think, like, you know what I mean? In which case, like if you're looking for the truth, what you have to do is you have to like theoretically form a conception. But then once you've formed a conception, you have to do the second job, which is to put the hammer to it. You've got to take a hammer and you've got to put the hammer to it, and then like you've got to smash it. And the only way to put the hammer to it is not with yin energy, it's with yang energy. You've got to go out there and then you've got to like not value the thing anymore. You've got to like not value truth anymore, and what you've got to value is the thrill of striking the hammer at it and to see how you feel when it happens. In which case, one hand you value it, you have your, it's like you go into two rooms for two different things. You go into room one and it's just like, I'm here to like create my most educated guess about what the thing is. But then like once you have the thing, you go outside and then like you don't value it anymore, and you go into the second room, and then your value when you go into the second room is action, is experience, is thrill. It's like the feeling of whatever. It's just like it's action based. In which case you become a dumb human again. You're not conceptual, and your gut and your heart based, and you're just smashing it. And it's just like it's a cycle between like going into one room and out of the other.
Yeah, 100%. No, that's interesting. And it's kind of how like the TI, well, all of the functions work. You know, you have to, for example, with TI and FE, no matter how long I sit and contemplate over these concepts, I still have to go out and produce it to people. But it may be in a way that people can't really receive because maybe they're not looking for truth. They need something that resonates with their soul. And so they need someone to inspire them that way. And maybe that's not something I'm capable of doing at this point. But I think eventually down the line, it will reach that point. Because I think it just goes through a process. Yeah.
Or another way to put it is like if somebody asks you like there's 8 cognitive functions, what's the best one? There's like there is no best one. It's like for what purpose? They're all good for something else, and they all help each other. It's this little team, and each function has a part to play. And we like the more you can respect the different tools and what they're supposed to do, like the better it is. It's just like I guess it's like the whole attitude of diversity. I like it. You know what I mean?
Love diversity, yeah.
You know what I mean? But like that's what it is. Like, and I guess like the message is like to have diversity within the self.
Yeah.
It's not like usually when we think of diversity, it's just like there's a woman, there's a man, there's whatever. You know what I mean? There's like a black man, a white man. It's like we can kind of all get behind the idea of like we all like each other. You know, we respect each other, which is fine. Yeah. And most people, like, assuming they're not dickheads, you know what I mean? They like diversity, but then like the key. Like the maybe not so like the more difficult part, which is like the integration of the point A and the point B, is like respecting that diversity within yourself. Because like once you can flip between like, okay, TI is good for this thing, but you know, it's got its limitations. We don't want to neglect like FI. You know what I mean? My heart, my faith, whatever you want to call it, or I don't want to neglect my SE, my experiential need for thrill and power. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's so nice to have the framework to be able to identify this within yourself as well.
I agree. I 100% agree.
You can actually put language to it. It's hard to communicate. Well, just being unconscious about this stuff anyway, you're all over the place. You know, you're so imbalanced. So yeah, this framework is so powerful, and that's why like I'm just so passionate about it because it can honestly revolutionize the world in really, really powerful ways. And I really wish more people knew about it and understood it because, you know, a lot of the time we do. Dr. Linda Barron, she speaks of a concept called BLM syndrome, be like me syndrome, where, you know, when we're unconscious, we constantly want people to just be like us, or people, you know, we try to be like other people if we have low self-esteem. Just because if we expect people to be like us, it makes us more comfortable because people acting in contrary to what we know and what we're comfortable with, it just, you know, just makes you feel like very unstable. But being able to appreciate those intrinsic diverse qualities, this is what actually leads to human advancement.
I agree. I agree.
It's a very powerful concept that more people, and I feel like this is one of the reasons why they don't teach this stuff in universities, because I feel like humans would literally progress so much and they would literally outnumber the elite. I don't know if you are on this, you know, idea of like the people taking over the world and stuff like that. You know, there's certain people in charge of like universities and trying to keep people working under a certain construct. That's another rabbit hole I'm not going to go down.
You know what's the equivalent of? It's the equivalent of like just knowing your muscle groups, like physically. Like being able to identify your chest and your shoulders and your legs, except like inside.
The neurological cell is like, you know, the building of a muscle cell. The more you exercise it, the stronger it's going to get. I've got somebody coming here because I'm trying to move town. I've got someone to come in to view my house because I'm doing a potential home swap, and they're going to be coming in about like an hour.
I'm getting constant calls.
Yes, and I thought we've been on this call for so long. It's just gone so quick, so fast as well. Yeah. You know, it's been really interesting.
It's been really, really great talking. I've really enjoyed the conversation. I think you sound really intelligent. You sound really cool. Let's do it again sometime.
Right, you do as well. You've been your insights and everything. It's been really enlightening to me. So no, I appreciate, you know, speaking to you, and maybe we get Sean or anyone else who wants to join the conversation. I want to meet more people. I want to speak to more people.
Yeah. That's like 100%. Yo, I'm gonna let you go. I'm gonna log off the live. Anybody that's tuned in, I think there's like maybe one or two. Like, appreciate you tuning in. Carmina,
Send them an
it's a
inbox.
pleasure.
It was a pleasure. Have a good day
Have a good one.
and drive safe. Take care.
Bye-bye.